In 2017, a woman named Dolores Cruz lost her beloved 24-year-old son, Eric, in a car accident. For months after his death, Dolores cried herself to sleep every night. She writes, "When a loved one transitions, someone who is the world to you, it feels like you have lost a part of yourself." She craved to still be able to feel his presence with her, and so she began a practice of self-guided meditations every night to help feel connected to him and to soothe herself to sleep. And in her meditations, she would slowly guide herself to a beautiful place. Most often it was a sandy beach with clear blue water and palm trees. I usually spent about 10 minutes guiding myself through a lovely pathway of trees and flowers and hills and grasses that led to that glorious beach, she writes. She imagines the details of her destination to invite the memory of her son to be with her there. The destination looks like this, she says, a table and 2 chairs overlooking the water, and there that I could sit with Eric, and we could have a latte, and we could talk, enjoying that breeze and the scent of the ocean. Her body and mind would calm as she traveled that pathway, that 10 minutes of traveling through the beautiful flowers and trees to get to that table. And when she arrived and sat down at that table she had prepared for 2 in her imagination, she imagined Eric arriving too, coming from not that far away, wearing his usual jeans and t-shirt and baseball cap. I knew it was something created by my mind, Cruz writes, but regardless, it felt like I had spent time with him. It brought me comfort. This was her nighttime ritual for a long time, until one night, she was extra tired when she got into bed, and so she just said aloud to Eric that she was going to skip the pathway and just meet him at the table overlooking the beach. And so she skipped that 10 minutes of traveling on her way to the table, and she just arrived there, and she sat down, and she imagined him coming up, again in that same outfit, the jeans, the t-shirt, the cap. And within just seconds of arriving there with him in her imagination, she was crying, as she often did when she imagined being with him. She heard in her right ear, "I'm right here, Mom." "I heard my son tell me that he is right here," she says. And she goes on, she says, "I had imagined the beach. I had imagined the rolling waves and the cool breeze. I imagined that quaint seaside table and the chairs where I waited as Eric walked towards me. But I had not imagined him telling me that he was right here. It was a surreal moment," she writes, "a moment of peace that cannot be described in human words. I was enveloped and held by his love. It was a gift. It was a glimpse. It was a connection." So many people have stories like this. I imagine that there's many people in this space, virtual space and sanctuary, that have a story like this, where we heard a departed loved one say something to us, or we noticed a bird that they loved who kept vigil at our window for hours when we were going through something difficult. Or we felt a gentle, loving hug for them while we slept, or we felt as though they were sharing some important message with us in a dream. Some people will say that these experiences are just tricks that our grieving minds play on us, or that they're our heart's way of soothing itself in the wake of devastating loss. And maybe. In our tradition of Unitarian Universalism, the main thing that we know about the afterlife is that we cannot know, that we cannot truly know. There are millions of different imaginings that humans have about what comes after this life, from heaven and hell to reincarnation to some kind of reuniting with the loved ones that have gone before us, to a simple nothingness. One of my favorite imaginings is this. It's a quote from an anonymous person online that, "I hope death is like being carried to your bedroom when you were a child and fell asleep on the couch during a party. I hope you can hear the laughter from the next room." The imaginings that we have from the pearly gates, milk and honey, heaven, to a comfortable sleep while we vaguely hear our loved ones still living and laughing, to the peace of a simple nothingness in a dark and warm ground, can be soothing to us while we live. And of course, images of hellfire and damnation can terrify us, designed to terrify us. Some of us have a clear faith in some version of what comes after this life, including some of the atheists among us who have a strong faith in the nothingness. But I would guess that most of us hold our imaginings sort of loosely. In times when we lose loved ones or when we face our own end, we often focus on those questions more. We explore the different ways of imagining what comes next. There's an old belief that this time of the year, the veil is thin. In other words, that there's a veil between this world of the tangible, this world of the living, and the world of the dead, or the spiritual world. That these worlds coexist always, a here and now world bound by the linear passage of time, and an eternal world that holds the spirits who have died. And at least one of the origins of this understanding comes from Celtic pagans, from the indigenous religion of people in what is now Ireland, which then kind of became more known across Europe, and then some piece of which was adopted into Christian traditions as Christianity spread across Europe over a millennia ago. The veil is thin during the Wiccan holiday of Samhain, which marks the end of summer and the harvest season and the beginning of winter, or the season of death. So it's this time. It's a little bit earlier this weekend, October 31st through November 1st. The barrier between the worlds becomes permeable, and the spirits of the dead can come to visit the living. It's the origin of what we now celebrate as Halloween, which is mostly a secular holiday in this country. All Saints and All Souls Day in Christian traditions, and Dia de los Muertos in Mexican culture, and many other holidays lift up similar ideas of permeability between the worlds of the living and the dead of this time of year. And even some of the rituals are similar. There's often some kind of altar of photos of departed loved ones and making food for the dead sometimes lighting candles, visiting cemeteries. Some of these practices have a grave feel to them, seriousness and a centering of grief, and some of them have a celebratory feel to them, a joyful reconnection with loved ones gone before. So whether your theology or your cultural practice lies closer to Samhain or to All Souls Day or to Dia de los Muertos or none of the above, I still think it matters to pause and to reflect and to honor those who have died before us. It matters because they mattered. And in our remembering, we honor their memory. And it matters because each person who touches our lives changes us, impacts us in good and bad and indescribable ways. And though some piece of who we are is inherently specific to us, so much of who we are is the simple carrying forth of how we've been impacted by others. We are musicians because a teacher passed on their love of music and a skill with an instrument. Or we bake when we're anxious because a grandparent made us cookies when we were a sad little kid. It matters that we honor our dead because even as honoring the dead brings the focus on our own mortality, it can also help us to touch our immortality. Because how many of us wish we could have told someone how much they meant to us before they died? How many of you have someone in your life that you wish you could have said something more to them? Most of us virtually. How many of us wish we could have found a way to tell them that we understand them a little bit more now? Maybe we even forgive them when we didn't when they were alive. And so if we, the living, hold so much unspoken love and understanding and forgiveness of those who have now died, surely that means that we will receive the same when we die, that there are people in this world who will love and understand and forgive us long after we are gone, even if we never hear of it, that our lives mean so much more than we will ever know. At the time my father was in treatment for brain cancer, the cancer that would eventually take his life, my former spouse and I were students at a West African school of traditional meditation and philosophy. Each weekend we would make a long drive from Boston down to Brooklyn for our class with our teacher and our fellow students, and then we would drive back home. It was a time of a lot of driving. And each day at our own home, we engaged in the spiritual practices that we were taught there, meditations and prayers and making offerings. We joined this class in the first place because my spouse was interested in getting closer to his own roots as a Black American. He wanted to know the indigenous practices of his African ancestors before they were stolen into enslavement and brought into the United States. And I too yearned for a deeper spiritual practice than I had received in my own Unitarian Universalism as a child, though I was wary of cultural misappropriation of these practices as a white person. But our teacher reminded me that all humanity does ultimately come from Africa. And though my roots are perhaps a bit further away than my ex-husband's, if I brought my full self and my respect, they would welcome me to the class. And so in this tradition that we were learning, the Kemetic tradition, I was taught that because the gods needed my ancestors to bring my life into being, that I too needed my ancestors to offer worship back up to God, that they were an intermediary of sorts. And there was a clearly prescribed set of prayers and practices that we did every morning, including a monthly calendar of when to make offerings of incense to the gods and when to make offerings of food to the ancestors. The food offerings involved a simple recipe of mixing several different types of grain together with water and salt and making a thin batter that we would fry in oil. It ended up with like little things that sort of resembled silver dollar pancakes. And we would offer them with honey on our home altar alongside our prayers, and we would eat some of them as well. It was a simple ritual, and it was a chance to think of those lives that made my own possible. When my father was close to his death, in those last days when he was sleeping continually but still breathing, his heart still beating, I told him that after he died that I was going to make pancakes for him the way he made pancakes for me as a child. I told him that we would still be connected, that I would still be able to offer a gift and nourishment to him even though he wouldn't be in this world anymore. Our grieving minds play tricks on us, it is true. Our hearts find ways of soothing themselves in the wake of devastating loss. It's true, of course they do. And I didn't know where my father would go after death, because the certainty of so many of the world's traditions had always felt like they were more about the needs of the living to feel okay with death than any actual insight into the great mystery of what comes after life. I had never known what would come after this life, but since those days leading up to my father's death, I have known that it can be meaningful to imagine. I didn't want to lose him. I didn't want to stop taking care of his body, even when caretaking was an enormous task alongside my mother and my brother, because taking care of him meant loving him, and it meant that he was still here. And so I leaned into the idea that I could still take care of him beyond the grave, that I could offer prayers for him that arose from an ancient source, even if they didn't make a great deal of sense to me, that I could make him pancakes first thing in the morning, dipped in honey, and take a bite out of them myself, just as he had made food for me at the start of so many days. Because my father had a tradition of delivering a breakfast plate to my seat at the kitchen table that almost always had the first bite taken out of it himself. I thought that that's how bagels came when I was a child. You did that for me, Dad. I can do it for you now. As the years went on, I moved away from that specifically prescribed calendar of prayers and offerings that I was taught in the Kemetic meditation school. But from time to time, I still make offerings to my ancestors, leaving some food or flowers at a grave, or speaking gratitude or love to them through my lips or in the silent sanctuary of my heart while in meditation. Not because I know that their departed spirits are hungry for what I offer, necessarily. I don't really know. But because some of the ways that I offer love are through food, and through creating beauty, and through song, and through speaking. And whether or not there is some version of them that can receive what I offer, I know that I am made better every time I offer love and gratitude. Our efforts to connect with those who have died matter, maybe for the dead themselves, certainly for those of us who still live. Sometimes we feel them connecting back to us as Dolores Cruz did when she heard her son's voice in her right ear during her nightly guided meditation. Sometimes they arrive in our dreams and feel as real as life itself. Sometimes the symbols that remind us of them show up right when we need them, and it can feel too meaningful to be coincidence. And sometimes, and perhaps maybe most of the time, for most of us, we don't hear them. And we don't see them in our dreams, and we search for signs of them in nature, and we find only regular brown chirping sparrows and trees that may be lush but may not be our loved ones, and dying autumn grass. Though we living people have countless imaginings of what happens after we die, some of us a deep faith in a specific something or a peaceful nothing, it matters to pause, it matters to reflect, it matters to honor those who have died before us. In honoring them, we bring our attention to that which was best in them that we strive to carry forth in ourselves. In honoring them, we remember that each of us impacts the world in so many more ways than we will ever know. They say the veil will thin, and it is a blessing to so many of us who've lost loved ones before. So blessings to you, my friends, whether this has been an All Souls or an All Saints time for you, a Samhain or a Dia de los Muertos time for you, or a none of the above time for you. Whether through your words and deeds or the meditations of your heart or the offerings of your altar, may you lift love and gratitude for those who have mattered and those who have died. May your imaginings or your faith in where they are now bring you comfort. May they bring you the hearing of their voice or a visit in your dreams. May they bring you a plate of pancakes with a big bite already taken out. Amen. Blessed be. And Ashe.
Blessed be.
Hi, I'm Reverend Abby Tennis, and I use she, her pronouns.
I'm Reverend Alexandre da Silva Soto, and my pronouns are they, them, and theirs.
And we are the ministers of the First Unitarian Church of Philadelphia, where it is our mission to awaken love and justice in our lives and in the world. We're so glad you watched this video, and we hope that its message connects with your soul.
We also want to invite you to join us for Zoom services Sunday morning at 11 a.m. or come in person at 2125 Chestnut Street, Center City, Philadelphia.
Whether you join in person or online, in these services you'll hear messages like you just heard. You'll get a chance to sing together, pray together, and even greet one another in coffee hour afterwards, whether you're brand new or a longtime member.
You can always find a Zoom link to our services and more about what to expect on Sunday mornings on our website, philauu.org, philauu.org. The link is below.
If you are connecting with this message and feel moved to give to the mission of this congregation, we invite you to click on the link below again and follow the prompts to give, or send a text message to 215-709-5095. And again, follow the prompts.
If someone in your life needs to hear these words today, please share this video. And again, thank you so much for watching.
We hope to see you soon.
See you soon.